you may have never heard of, the backwards law, but you're living by it every single day. The only problem? You're doing it backwards. From the moment we're born, we're taught, if you want something badly enough, chase it. Want money? Work yourself to the bone. Want love? Try harder to impress. Want success? Outwork everyone. But let me ask you, how's that working out? The harder you chase money, the more it slips away. The more you try to impress someone, the colder they become. The more you hustle for success, the further it feels. Why? Because you, like most people, are unknowingly misusing one of the most powerful laws of reality. The backwards law doesn't mean you shouldn't take action. It means you must stop acting from a place of lack, fear, or desperation. Because when you move from the energy of, I don't have, the universe responds by confirming it. Over and over again. You're not failing because you're not good enough. You're stuck because you're trying too hard in all the wrong ways. And if this topic speaks to you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It lets me know that you find this kind of content valuable, and it gives me the motivation to keep creating more videos like this. Be sure to watch until the end, because we'll explore not just the why, but the how, so you can actually apply this in your own life. So where did this backwards law come from, and why does it hit so close to home when you hear it? Alan Watts, the British philosopher, known for bringing Eastern thought into Western conversations, popularized the idea. He put it plainly, the more you pursue feeling better all the time, the less satisfied you become. In other words, the harder you chase a state, happiness, wealth, love, the more you highlight that you lack it. And that sense of lack becomes the dominant emotional state that shapes your reality. This isn't just philosophical poetry, psychology and neuroscience agree. Harvard psychologist Daniel Wegner studied what he called reverse intention, or the paradox of the mind. The more you try to fall asleep, the more alert you become. The more you try to forget, the more you remember. Try to suppress a thought, and it only gets louder. Why? Because trying to control a mental state only reinforces that you don't already have it. And the brain, highly efficient, will reflect the truth of what you're actually feeling, not what you're trying to force. In real life, this plays out in subtle but powerful ways. Many successful people have shared that their big breakthroughs didn't come from forcing or obsessing, but from shifting their approach. They didn't quit, but they stopped gripping so tightly. Take Howard Schultz, former CEO of Starbucks. Early in life, he didn't set out to build an empire or become a billionaire. His core drive came from a genuine memory, the warm, human connection of sharing coffee with his father. It wasn't about chasing success. It was about creating experiences that felt meaningful. That sincerity allowed him to build something enduring, not because he pushed harder, but because his motivation came from a real place. Not lack, not desperation, but love for the craft. This mirrors what Eastern philosophy teaches. Lao Tzu once wrote, "The more you try to control, the more you lose control." The Taoist concept of wu wei, or non-forcing, doesn't mean doing nothing. It means acting in harmony with the natural flow, moving when the time is right and knowing when to step back. You don't push the river to flow faster. You wait and you place your boat in the right current. Attachment to results, to timelines, to how things must go, is the resistance that blocks momentum. The more tightly you hold on, the more life resists. Meanwhile, detachment isn't giving up. It's creating space. It's saying, I'm open to this, but I'm whole either way. And ironically, that's when things start to show up, because there's finally room. You've probably felt this before. A job offer appeared the moment you stopped obsessing about it. The right person came when you stopped hunting. The answer arrived after you stopped wrestling with the question. These aren't coincidences. They're what happens when your mind lets go of resistance, and your energy becomes more open, more receptive. So what's the takeaway? Wanting good things isn't the issue, but chasing them from a place of lack backfires. Mentally, emotionally, even biologically, you end up in a loop of stress, overthinking, and burnout. The backwards law invites you to stop fixating on getting and start becoming. Ask yourself, who would I be if I already had this? How would I act, speak, breathe? Decide, start from there, and let the outcome take care of itself. Because maybe what you've been chasing isn't ahead of you. Maybe it's been waiting for you to slow down, soften, and become someone who can actually receive it. Building on the backwards law, let's get into one of its most persistent culprits, the scarcity mindset. This isn't just a buzzword tossed around in self-help circles. A scarcity mindset is a deep, often unconscious pattern of thinking, rooted in the belief that there's never enough. Not enough time, not enough money, not enough love, not enough success. It wires your brain to operate from fear, lack, and survival mode. And when that becomes your default setting, everything else gets distorted. Here's the deal. When your decisions are fueled by fear of missing out, fear of failing, or fear of not measuring up, your brain kicks into chronic stress mode. This isn't a temporary jolt of adrenaline. We're talking long-term cortisol surges that quietly erode your ability to think clearly, make creative leaps, or even recognize opportunity when it knocks. Neuroscience backs this up. Under prolonged stress, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning, judgment, and insight, goes offline. You're no longer responding to life with clarity. You're reacting from a mental bunker. And when you're stuck in that state, even abundance can look like scarcity. You miss the big picture because you're too fixated on surviving the small one. Let's look at how this plays out in the subconscious. When you say to yourself, "I want to be rich," what you're actually reinforcing over and over is the fact that you're not. The subconscious doesn't process want as a future goal. It processes the emotional tone you're in while saying it. So if there's desperation behind that desire, the message received is, "I don't have enough, I'm lacking, I'm behind." And the subconscious, being an excellent servant but a terrible interpreter, simply continues recreating that experience. It's what some call subconscious reverse programming. You keep telling yourself what you want, but emotionally you're rooted in its absence. That inner contradiction kills momentum. Instead of pulling what you want closer, you push it further away. Dr. Joe Dispenza's work gives this whole concept a solid scientific backbone. He's shown through studies that when people shift their internal emotional state, regardless of their external conditions, real, measurable changes start happening. Blood chemistry, brainwave patterns, immune response, even gene expression can shift. And more interestingly, people begin noticing new opportunities, relationships, and breakthroughs in their external reality. The shift inside literally starts changing the world outside. Why? Because the energy of lack closes doors. The energy of wholeness opens them. Think of it like this. People who genuinely believe they're enough tend to act from a place of grounded confidence. They take smarter risks. They don't chase validation. And as a result, they attract more. Not because they're manifesting some mystical outcome, but because they're showing up as someone already in tune with what they seek. The outside world just reflects that back. Here's a real-world example. A lot of successful entrepreneurs didn't get rich by obsessing over money. They focused on solving real problems, creating value, becoming skilled, building community. They became people of value and money followed, not the other way around. It's a shift from chasing to magnetizing. And that shift is only possible when the inner state moves from "I don't have" to "I already am." Now pause for a second and ask yourself this. What's the story I'm rehearsing in my head? Is it built around what I lack? Or around what I already carry? Because whatever you focus on, consciously or not, becomes your lens. And your lens becomes your life. Scarcity doesn't go away just because you get more. It goes away when you stop feeding it. That's where the real game changes. That scarcity story you've been running, it doesn't just shape how you feel. It shapes who you believe you are. According to Freud and many modern neuroscientists, The subconscious drives up to 95% of our behavior. That means most of what we do isn't actually a result of conscious choice. It's a reflection of deeper, often hidden beliefs about ourselves. You can try all the productivity hacks, set 100 goals, grind through your to-do list, but if, deep down, your identity whispers, "I'm not worthy," then self-sabotage will eventually kick in. Not because you're weak, because your subconscious is trying to stay consistent with who it believes you are. This is where the concept of core identity becomes critical. You don't act your way into a new identity. You become someone new, and your actions follow. That may sound abstract, but it's actually practical, because every habit you try to build, every goal you set, is filtered through the lens of your self-image. If that lens is cracked, so is your consistency. Here's the key truth most people miss. You can't outperform your self-concept. You can hustle past it for a while, sure, but eventually you'll revert to whatever level your identity is set at. Like a thermostat, if deep inside, you believe you're a procrastinator, not a leader, not the kind of person who's fit or successful, your brain will find subtle ways to bring you back to that baseline. Missed deadlines, unconscious avoidance, burnout, excuses dressed up as logic. So instead of asking, "What should I do?" the better question is, who is the version of me that already has what I want? And how do they think, feel, act? Not in some fake-it-till-you-make-it way, but in a grounded, aligned way. If you want to be someone who's financially free, ask, how does that person think about money, risk, time? If you want to be healthy, ask, how does that version of me treat their body? Not just in action, but in identity. This is why people often achieve a big goal and then lose it. They never updated the identity underneath. The weight comes back, the business plateaus, the relationship falls apart, because they were acting as someone else instead of becoming someone else. There's a reason James Clear says, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. But it works in reverse too. The identity you hold silently casts votes for the kind of actions you believe are you. Let's flip it. Rather than obsessing over outcomes, start from identity. Instead of, how can I get more confident? Try, what would a confident person do right now? Instead of, how can I hit this goal? Ask, what would the version of me who's already living that reality do with this exact moment? This shift is subtle but powerful. It moves you out of force and into alignment. You're no longer chasing. You're evolving. So if you're stuck, maybe it's not because you're not working hard enough. Maybe it's because you're working as someone who doesn't actually believe they can have it. Your job isn't to earn your worth. It's to update the script that says you weren't worthy in the first place. Stop trying to achieve your way into a new life. Start becoming the person who already lives it. Let's take this one step further. If identity shapes reality, then how do we become someone new without waiting for the world to change first? That's where Neville Goddard's law of assumption flips everything on its head. Neville's core teaching was bold. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you believe is true. In other words, reality isn't responding to your wishes. It's mirroring your assumptions. This idea cuts deeper than the often misunderstood law of attraction. While the law of attraction suggests that positive thinking brings positive outcomes, the law of assumption demands something tougher, a shift in core belief. You can think all the positive thoughts you want, but if you still walk around with the inner story that, I'm not enough, I'm unlucky, I never get what I want, then that's the script your subconscious hands to reality. The universe doesn't respond to your words, it responds to your state. Living under the law of assumption means acting as if what you desire has already happened. That doesn't mean pretending or faking. It means stepping into the mental, emotional, and behavioral posture of someone who already has the thing you want, and trusting that your external world will align in response. Sounds like wishful thinking? Not exactly. There's psychological muscle behind it. Take the Pygmalion effect. a well-documented phenomenon in psychology where expectations actually change outcomes. When teachers believe certain students are gifted, those students perform better, even if they weren't objectively ahead. Why? Because the teacher's expectations subtly shift their behavior. More encouragement, more patience, which in turn shapes the student's belief about themselves, and then their performance follows. Belief becomes reality. Now apply that to yourself. If you carry the assumption that you're already successful, already worthy, already chosen, your behavior changes. You make sharper decisions. You don't panic. You stop settling. You act from stability, not scarcity. And that energy, it draws in opportunities you'd miss otherwise because now you're tuned into them. Here's a practical example. Imagine someone who grew up broke but decides to live as if they're already financially secure. That doesn't mean they go out and spend recklessly. It means they think like someone who isn't controlled by money fear. They don't hoard. They don't get stuck in either-or decisions. They invest in themselves. They learn. They build. And over time, their world adjusts to meet that assumption. It's not magic. It's alignment. Neville's approach wasn't about blind faith. It was about embodiment. You assume the end state and let the world reorganize around it. That means if you want love, you stop behaving like someone desperately seeking it. You start living like someone who already has it. That shift in frequency affects everything. Your posture, your tone, your choices. People notice even if they can't explain why. Let's also be real. Assumptions already shape your life. You assume things about yourself all the time. I'm bad with money. I'm not a morning person. I never meet the right people. And what happens? You unconsciously find ways to make those assumptions true. So if that's the case, why not hijack the system on purpose? Of course, there's resistance. The mind loves proof. It says, I'll believe it when I see it. But Neville flips that. You'll see it when you believe it. That doesn't mean delusion. It means you stop outsourcing your belief to circumstances. You lead with it. This is where most people get stuck. They want change, but they keep checking if it's working, if it's showing up yet. That's not assumption, that's doubt wearing a disguise. True assumption doesn't ask for evidence. It acts like it already knows. So here's the challenge. What would change if you stopped trying to get what you want, and instead lived like it was already yours? How would you walk, speak, decide? Rest? Start from there. Let reality play catch up. If assumption is the engine of personal transformation, then emotional control is the steering wheel, because what good is driving forward? If your emotions keep yanking you off the road, let's be honest. No matter how powerful your beliefs, or how well-formed your identity is, if you can't manage your emotional state, everything else unravels. Emotions are not just background noise, they are energy in motion. And if left unchecked, they hijack your focus, drain your motivation, and cloud your judgment. At the root of most poor decisions, emotional impulsivity. You get triggered, reactive, and before you know it, you're stuck in another cycle of regret. You lash out. You withdraw. You quit too early. You say yes when you meant no. Not because you're weak, but because your system was flooded, and you didn't pause long enough to respond instead of react. This is where emotional mastery becomes non-negotiable. It's not about suppressing what you feel. It's about becoming bigger than it. The Stoics knew this long before modern psychology caught up. In Stoic philosophy, external events are considered out of our control. What is in our control is how we choose to respond. That's where real power lies. Not in controlling life, but in controlling our lens on it. Epictetus said it cleanly, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. So how do you train for that? You don't need a monastery. You need tools. Start with the 5-minute rule. When a strong emotion hits, anger, jealousy, fear, give yourself 5 minutes to feel it without judgment. Let it move through your system. Breathe. Name it. But once that timer is up, choose your next move consciously. Emotions are natural. Letting them steer your life isn't. Then there's the zoom out technique. Ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? Most of what triggers us lives in the temporary. But when we zoom out, we gain perspective, and perspective dissolves panic. The email, the comment, the missed opportunity. It's rarely as big as your nervous system wants you to believe. And if you want to test your mastery, try the no reaction challenge. 1 full day of not reacting to anything, just observing. You'll notice how quickly your mind wants to jump in, control, defend, prove. But if you can sit with that without acting on it, you take back your power. You stop being a puppet pulled by emotions and start becoming the one pulling the strings. The truth is, energy management starts with emotional awareness. If your emotions are unstable, your energy will be too. And without stable energy, consistent behavior, the kind that builds a life, becomes impossible. So here's the question. Are your emotions driving your life, or are you driving them? Mastering your emotions isn't about becoming numb. It's about becoming sharp, clear, grounded. It's the difference between being a storm and being the eye of it. Everything we've explored, identity, assumption, emotional mastery, leads here, the art of letting go. And no, this isn't about giving up. It's about getting out of your own way. Letting go is often misunderstood as surrendering in defeat. But in reality, it's the opposite. It's what unlocks momentum. When you let go, you're not quitting on your goals. You're releasing the tension, the obsession, the control that's actually blocking them. Think of attachment like stones in a backpack. The more you carry, the slower you move. Letting go isn't weakness. It's intelligence. It's throwing out the rocks so you can finally run. Chapneem, clinging to what must happen, how it should look, when it should arrive, creates internal friction. That friction wears you down. It burns your energy. It creates resistance not just emotionally, but biologically. The stress, the tightness, the overthinking, that's the cost of not letting go. Practices like meditation, mindful breathing, and stillness are tools to release that grip. They don't erase your ambition. They help you return to clarity, to remember what actually matters, instead of obsessing over the illusion of control. Mindfulness creates space, and in that space you stop reacting. You start responding. You align. Taoist philosophy captures this in one of its most powerful ideas, Wu Wei, doing without doing. That doesn't mean inaction. It means effortless action. The kind that happens when you're flowing with life, not fighting it. When you trust the current enough to swim with it, not against it. Here's the truth. Most of what you're chasing isn't meant to be wrestled into reality. It's meant to be allowed in. Letting go is how you allow. It's the clearing, the invitation, the softening of the hand so something can land in it. So if you've been grinding, forcing, pushing, maybe the move isn't more force. Maybe it's less resistance. Let go. Not because you don't care, but because you finally do. We need this part because after letting go, the question becomes, then how do I move forward? The answer lies in Wu Wei, the ancient Taoist principle of flowing with, not against, life. Wu Wei isn't passivity. It's precision. It's acting at the right time in the right way, with the least resistance and the most alignment. It's what happens when you're fully present, deeply attuned, and not forcing results out of fear or ego. Instead of pushing harder, you start moving smarter. Not because you're lazy, but because you're finally in sync with something bigger than control. Think of the artist who tries to paint something great to be famous. The brush stiffens. The lines feel forced. The work lacks soul. Now compare that to the artist who paints from love, from presence, from flow, no performance, no pressure. That's when the magic happens. The canvas comes alive. And ironically, that's the work that does get recognized. Because people feel the difference between effort and essence. Wu Wei applies to everything: art, business, love. In business, we've all seen someone chase success with desperation. They hustle hard, say yes to everything, overpromise, burn out, and still feel behind. Compare that to someone who knows their lane, moves with strategy and trust, says no when it's time to say no, and builds with longevity in mind. They may move slower at first, but they last, and their success feels earned, not forced. In relationships, the same law applies. Love that's clingy, controlling, always seeking validation, suffocates. But when there's space, ease, and flow, people relax. Connection deepens. Love grows, not because someone demanded it, but because it had room to breathe. Wu Wei teaches that nature doesn't rush, yet everything gets done. The river doesn't force its way through the rocks. It flows around them. The seasons don't argue about timing. They arrive when they're meant to. What if your life worked the same way? What if success isn't something you conquer, but something you collaborate with? What if the goal isn't to dominate, but to align? Wu Wei invites you to stop fighting reality, to act when it's time and rest when it's not, to build with rhythm, not resistance. You don't need to squeeze life for results. When you're aligned with yourself, your values, your timing, you become magnetic, creative, resilient, and in that state, things move, opportunities come, success arrives, not through force but through flow. To flow with life like in Wu Wei, you have to stop dragging the weight of old mental programs, those looping VHS tapes playing outdated beliefs in your head. Because no matter how hard you try to evolve, if you're running on a story that says, "I'm not good enough," you'll unconsciously keep creating experiences that prove it. These are what we call limiting beliefs. They sound like, "I'm not a people person. I always mess up in relationships. I'm not the type to succeed." But these aren't truths, they're just thoughts you've repeated enough times to feel real. Most of them come from past experiences, usually painful or embarrassing, that you replayed in your mind until they became identity. Imagine your mind like an old VHS player. Each time something goes wrong, you record a mental tape, and the more often you hit replay, the deeper it grooves into your system. Over time, it becomes background noise, shaping your decisions, your reactions, your self-worth, all without you noticing. To shift that, you don't rip the tape out and pretend it never existed. You record over it. That's where emotional anchoring comes in. Instead of just repeating empty affirmations, you attach new beliefs to real, lived feelings. Moments where you already succeeded, felt strong, or proved something to yourself. These moments are your proof, your raw material for rewiring. Let's say you've always believed, "I'm bad at communication." Somewhere in your life, even once, you've had a conversation that clicked, where someone really listened or told you you explained something clearly. That moment matters. Close your eyes. Go back there. Feel what that success felt like. The energy in your body, your tone, your posture. That's the feeling you want to anchor the new belief to. Not, "I'm a great communicator in theory," but "I've already done it and I can repeat it." When you visualize the future, bring that same emotional truth into the scene. Don't fantasize. Feel. What would your body feel like if you were already thriving in that new version of yourself? How would your chest feel? Your voice? Your day? Visualization only works when it's somatic. When your body starts believing it's real, not just your brain. But even that won't last long if you don't rebuild your ecosystem. You can't adopt a new identity in the same environment that built the old one. So look at your inputs. Who are you around? What do they reinforce? What habits are you practicing? Do they belong to the old you or the new you? What spaces are you in? Are they chaotic, draining, uninspiring, or do they support the version of you you're stepping into? Change sticks when it's integrated, when your friendships, routines, conversations, and content all speak to the identity you're choosing. That's when you stop trying to be different and start being you, updated. So here's the real work. Stop replaying the tapes of who you used to be. Start recording new ones with emotion, intention, and alignment. Your brain isn't fighting you. It's just playing what it knows. Show it something new. Maybe right now you're thinking, so what? I just need to think positively and everything magically works out? Fair question. And no, that's not what this is saying. This isn't about slapping fake optimism on top of chaos. It's not positive vibes only, or pretending everything's fine when it's not. In fact, that kind of surface-level positivity often makes things worse, because it ignores the deeper programming underneath. Real change doesn't come from thinking better thoughts. It comes from feeling differently at your core, and then acting from that space. If your subconscious still believes you're not worthy, not safe, or not enough, no amount of positive thinking will override that. The mind might say one thing, but your energy says another, and people and life respond to your energy, not your slogans. A common trap is spiritual bypassing, where people try to manifest or assume their dream life, while secretly still doubting it. They repeat affirmations and visualize success, but never become the person who naturally creates it. So they wait, and nothing shifts. Why? Because there's no alignment between what they say and how they feel. That's not the work. The real shift comes when your inner state changes so deeply that new actions follow without force. When you're grounded in belief and emotional clarity, you move differently, not because someone told you to hustle, but because it feels natural to act. You start making decisions from calm, not panic, from vision, not fear. That's what makes change sustainable. Still skeptical? Look at the people who actually create results over the long term. CEOs, investors, artists, athletes. What separates them isn't just skill or hustle. It's emotional regulation. When the market crashes, when feedback stings, when things fall apart, they don't collapse. They adjust. They stay centered. That kind of inner stability isn't magic. It's trained. It's built from the inside out. So no, this isn't about thinking your way into success. It's about becoming the kind of person who attracts, handles, and sustains success naturally, not forcefully. Think less about positive thinking. Think more about authentic alignment. That's where the shift really happens. Here's something real you can do, not just think about. Try this challenge for the next 48 hours. Act as if what you want has already happened. Whatever your goal is, financial stability, a healthy relationship, inner peace. Show up like the version of you who already lives that reality. Each morning when you wake up, take one deep breath. Close your eyes. Don't just say, I am confident or I am successful. Feel it. Where in your body would that confidence live? What would it change in your posture, your pace, your tone? Anchor into that version, even just for a moment. That feeling is the signal. Then, throughout your day, check in with yourself once every hour if you can. Ask, right now, am I operating from fear or from certainty? Am I reacting from my old story or responding from the identity I'm stepping into? This isn't about pretending. It's about practicing. You're training your nervous system to remember what alignment feels like. So your choices, tone, and energy start to shift. And when those shift, results follow. Remember this, you're not missing anything. You're simply becoming the person who can hold what you've been asking for. If this message hits home, hit like so we know it landed. Subscribe if you want more content that actually changes how you live, not just how you think. And if you're trying this 48-hour shift, drop a comment and let us know what you notice. See you on the other side.